Okay, so we passed the single digit mark and now we are at 12 followers. So thank you. And I'm also really happy to see that I'm being listened in the country of Congo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So thank you for listening all the way over there. Aside from obviously my home country, El Salvador, thank you to the many listeners in the US, Canada, Poland, the UK, Italy. This is awesome. So thank you guys for tuning in. And if you haven't hit the follow button, please do so you don't miss any of the content that we're discussing here in regards to the leadership code. Now, there's an interview I'm preparing that it will be in Spanish, but it means a lot to me. And the reason why it's so special is because she was my first boss ever. And I owe a lot of gratitude to her resilience, her compassion, and also her teaching. So I'm really looking forward to having this interview. So I hope that you guys can enjoy it as well. I'll be announcing when that episode will air. And I think all of us are going to learn so much from her. So more to come on that one. Welcome back to the Leadership Code podcast. I'm Jose Navarro, and if you're new here, hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast. This is where we break down what it really means to be a great leader in today's world. No fluff, no boring corporate talk, at least I hope. And, just real practical lessons from history, business, and everyday life that helps you lead with confidence. And well, today we're diving into one of the most incredible leadership stories in history, the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. But we're not stopping there. We're going to look at how leaders like Arne Sorenson, Google's top executives, and women from Hidden Figures show us why leadership is about more than just titles. It's about breaking barriers, building trust, and creating real impact that lasts. So let's talk leadership, diversity, and what we can learn from some of the boldest leaders in history. All right. Now, before we jump into these incredible stories, let's set the scene. It's the early 1940s. The world is basically at war. Hitler's Nazi Germany has taken over most of Europe. Japan just basically bombed Pearl Harbor, and the US has officially entered World War II. Basically, it's all hands on deck. The US military needs pilots, soldiers, and any skilled fighters to take on the Axis powers. But here's the problem. Back then, the American military was completely segregated. Black soldiers weren't allowed in the same units as white soldiers. And when it came to flying planes, well, the US military flat out refused to let black men become pilots. That's just what it was. Yeah. Yep. They really thought that. Now, back in the day, it wasn't that wild because it was part of the culture. Black people were seen as a lesser group of people. So when the government finally agreed to let black pilots train, they just did it as a test, an experiment, right? Because they actually really thought that they would fail. No, but boy, were they wrong. The Tuskegee Airmen became some of the most elite pilots in the entire war. So let's go ahead and let's break it down into four separate principles here. So the first one is leadership actually starts with breaking barriers. So have you ever walked into a room and feel like people are basically just waiting for you to fail? Like like literally, they have already made up their minds about you before you even open your mouth. It's kind of like if you're playing I don't know, if let's say you're playing soccer and before you enter the pitch, they are not even letting you in just because of the color of your skin or just because how you look and without you actually even showing your skills. So that is exactly what happened to the Tuskegee Airmen. That's what they went through. These men trained at Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama, and they had to be twice as good to prove they even deserved a shot. And guess what? They weren't just good, they were exceptional. Some of the key facts here about these incredible men were the following. They flew more than 15,000 missions. They destroyed over 260 enemy aircraft and had one of the lowest loss rates for bomber escorts. And get this, at first, while bomber pilots didn't want black pilots escorting them, but after the Tuskegee Airmen started protecting their bombers better than anyone else, white pilots started specifically requesting them. So the lesson here is basically when you're given an opportunity, even if people don't believe in you, show up and deliver so hard that they cannot ignore you. Now, a more, I guess, modern example. I recently saw a movie that's called Hidden Figures, and it's an incredible story. It's about these black women mathematicians at NASA, and they weren't just ignored; they were actively left out. Left out of critical space flight calculations because of their race and gender, just because they were black and they were women. Now, here's the incredible part. What is it exactly that they did? Now, if you haven't seen the movie, I strongly recommend that you watch it. But basically, they became so good at their work at NASA that the government, or NASA in this case, couldn't function without them. Katherine Johnson's calculations helped launch John Glenn into orbit. And if she had made one mistake, the mission would have failed. The lesson here is that sometimes you don't just need to be good, you need to be undeniable. Now, point number 2 is about trust. And trust is everything in leadership. And I would like to share a really powerful story. So before I do that, let's put it all into perspective. Nobody follows a leader they don't trust. And trust is built through consistent action, not words. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen didn't just fly missions. They built trust by protecting their teams. When bomber pilots saw that these men had their backs, racism basically just took a backseat to survival. It was non-existent. They didn't care about if he was black or if they were black or not. They just cared about surviving. So if you want people to trust you, you have to be reliable. You have to be consistent and have their backs always. Arne Sorenson, the former CEO of Marriott. Now, this guy wasn't just any CEO. He was the first non-family CEO of the company. But here's what made him an extraordinary leader. When COVID-19 hit, Marriott, like every other hotel chain, took a massive financial hit. Instead of hiding behind press releases, Sorenson did something unexpected. He released a deeply personal and raw video message to his employees. Now, at the time, he was battling pancreatic cancer. He had lost his hair from chemotherapy, but he still stood in front of the team and spoke honestly about how hard the pandemic was, the difficult decisions the company had to make, and how much he valued his employees. Now, I want you to hear this message. I'm going to put the audio, listen carefully, and we'll discuss on the other end.
Hello, Marriott Associates. I'm here to give you an update on the impact of coronavirus, or COVID-19, on our business and the steps we're taking to respond to it. Because of the profound impact COVID-19 is having on so many of us around the world, this is the most difficult video message we have ever pulled together. Our team was a bit concerned about using a video today because of my new bald look. Let me just say that my new look is exactly what was expected as a result of my medical treatments. I feel good, and my team and I are 100% focused on overcoming the common crisis we face. Now let's talk about that crisis, COVID-19. Let's start with the health challenge itself. Across our company, the number of COVID-19 infected associates is low, and I'm grateful for this. I want to acknowledge the associates who are dealing with it as a patient, a parent, family member, or friend, and the hundreds of Marriott colleagues who are at this minute quarantined. Our well wishes and thoughts are with all of you. In terms of our business, COVID-19 is like nothing we've ever seen before. For a company that's 92 years old, that's borne witness to the Great Depression, World War II, and many other economic and global crises, that's saying something. But here are the facts. COVID-19 is having a more severe and sudden financial impact on our business than 9/11 and the 2009 financial crisis combined. The worst quarter we had in those earlier crises saw a roughly 25% decline in hotel revenues on average across the globe. In this case, which began in Greater China in January, we quickly saw a 90% decline in our business in China. In the 2 months since, we have seen COVID-19 extend to the rest of the world. In most markets, our business is already running 75% below normal levels. The principal challenge we face is obvious. Governments all around the world are taking the steps to contain COVID-19. The restrictions on travel, gatherings of people, and required social distancing is having an immediate impact by depressing demand for our hotels. As a result, we have hotels around the world that can't operate without incurring substantial economic losses and risking permanently their ability to reopen when this gets behind us. This has caused hundreds of hotels to close or start the process of closing until such time as demand begins to return. Given these circumstances, we've been forced to take proactive steps to respond to the crisis and are putting into place business contingency plans globally. While pieces of these continent contingency plans vary, given the differences in local laws and the geographies where we operate, certain elements are universal. We've worked to take controllable costs out of the business, like suspending all non-essential travel. We have paused all new hires, with the exception of a small number of mission-critical positions. We have stopped all hotel initiatives for 2020 and have gone dark on our brand marketing and advertising during this period. Both Mr. Marriott and I will not be taking any salary for the balance of 2020, and my executive team will be taking a 50% cut in pay. Above property around the world, we are moving to shortened work weeks, and in the U.S., we are also putting in place temporary leaves for at least the next 60 to 90 days that will impact most associates at our headquarters and above property locations. At the property level, contingency plans vary by geography and hotel occupancy rates, but for open hotels include closing food and beverage outlets, reducing staff, and closing floors of hotels. More details about these actions and what they mean will be shared through local HR teams. If there is any good news visible today, it is the signs of early recovery in Greater China. China appears to have succeeded in reducing the spread of COVID-19 through strong counteractions. China is now bringing manufacturing back online, and we are seeing some early signs of lodging demand begin to return. If this holds, it may bode well for the course of this epidemic in other parts of the world. In 2 weeks, I will mark my 8th anniversary as CEO, a position I accepted on the heels of 2 legends in hospitality. As a leader, I've experienced so many wonderful highs and a good number of challenging lows. I can tell you that I have never had a more difficult moment than this one. There is simply nothing worse than telling highly valued associates, people who are the very heart of this company, that their roles are being impacted by events completely outside of their control. I've never been more determined to see us through than I am at this moment. While it's impossible to know how long this crisis will last, I know we as a global community will come through the other side, and that when we do, our guests will be eager to travel this beautiful world again. When that great day comes, we will be there to welcome them. with the warmth and care we are known for the world over. As I close, I encourage you to please take care of yourself, your friends and family, and the community around you. I wish you good health and a sense of optimism. Together, we can and we will overcome this, and we'll thrive once again. Thank you, and be well.
Now, something that really stuck with me was, after listening to Arne Sorenson, is that how honest and vulnerable he was. He was battling cancer, but he still stood in front of his employees with no script. I don't know if he was reading, but it seemed very genuine. But there was no corporate fluff. He was just very honest about it. He put also empathy over profits. He acknowledged the pain of layoffs and reduced hours, making it clear that these decisions weren't taken lightly. He was transparent. He didn't, sugarcoat the crisis. He explained the financial hit Marriott was taking and the difficult choices ahead. And he was also leading by example. He announced that he and his executives would take zero salaries to help the company survive. He also ended with hope and resilience. Now, despite the crisis, he ended on a hopeful note, reminding employees that Marriott had survived through tough times before and would come out stronger. And I think that the real lesson here is that real leaders show up, especially in hard times. They don't just hide behind press releases. They communicate honestly. They lead with empathy and put their people first. So if you want to see the video, go look it up. It's on YouTube. You can look it as Arne Sorenson COVID-19 video, and it's just a master class in leading through crisis. Now, point number 3 is basically about diversity and its meaning. So diversity actually means nothing without inclusion. And I'm going to talk about Google's mistake and change, right? So everyone loves talking about diversity these days, but it's really difficult to see and to be in an environment where you can actually live that. Now, just hiring diverse people isn't enough. If they don't have a real voice in decisions, then it's just for show. The Tuskegee Airmen weren't just allowed to be pilots. They were actually trusted with real missions. And that's why they made history. Now, Google, a few years ago, Google was hiring tons of diverse talent. But there was one problem. They were leaving just as fast as they were hired. And why? Well, mainly it was because they didn't feel heard. So Google realized that diversity alone wasn't enough. So they started actively including these voices in leadership conversations, launching programs that supported women and minorities in tech, and measuring real impact instead of just hiring numbers. Now, the lesson here is that don't just bring people in the room, make sure that they have a seat at the table. And by that, I mean that they have opinions, that they are heard, and that the ideas that they put forth can become reality. Even if they have mistakes, we all do. Everyone makes mistakes, but that's the only way that we learn, by listening to the larger group, to those who are different from us. And that's what makes any team, any business, any organization strong. Now, I want to leave with the following question. And please write down your comments. I would really love to hear from you, as, like, what kind of leader do you want to be? Or what kind of leader do you think you are? Has this changed your perception of leadership? So my main takeaway here is that, the Tuskegee Airmen, Arne Sorenson, the women of Hidden Figures, and Google's transformation all teach us the same thing. And we see this across many organizations that have gone through the same process. I know that I'm just mentioning just a few examples here, but I know that there are many companies that have these great values. But three things that they teach us is that real leaders break barriers. They get out of the mold and look for ways to improve. Real leaders also build trust through actions, not words. And third one is that real leaders make sure diverse voices actually matter. They're not just there for show. They're not just there so that people can say, oh, that's a diverse company. They actually put a lot of these actions into play. So here's my challenge for you. Are you recognizing talent where others don't? If you have a team of a diverse group of people, are you listening to those that don't have much of a voice? Are you leading in a way that builds trust? And are you actually including different perspectives or just checking a box? Because at the end of the day, the best leaders don't just fit into the system. They're the ones who change it for the better. And I really hope that this episode can speak to your heart, to your mind, so that you can put also these principles into practice. All right, and that's it for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share, and keep the conversation going. Let's lead authentically, let's embrace diversity, and let's build something better together. See you next time. For listening to the Leadership Code podcast. Executive producer, Jose Navarro.